Hello, my name's Hannah Steerman. I'm going to talk to you today about traditional Chinese medical perspective on depression and anxiety. I want to begin by saying that we really look at emotions as energy, and that stagnation of these emotions can actually affect the vital organs within our system. So Chinese medicine really looks to increase the overall health of the person by increasing the vitality of the organs, and that way treating the condition. It makes them stronger, more able to face the challenges of life. And in that way, they feel healthier, and then the mind is more at peace. So that's really where we're coming from. So I want to begin today by looking at some of the theories that underlie these principles. We're going to begin with basic yin-yang theory and five-phase theory. We'll be looking at humans as a microcosm of the macrocosm. We're going to discuss the five phases and their interactions with each other, and the way in which this relates to mental activities within our bodies. We'll look at the effect of emotions on our physiology, and we'll use the law of the five phases to explain the mental energetics of the most common symptoms of depression and anxiety. We're going to look at Zang Fu diagnosis and treatment, how the five-phase theory translates into Zang Fu diagnostic terminology, some of these treatment principles and methods, and of course we'll have a conclusion. So with this slide, I'd like you to observe that when things are in balance, then there's a perfect reflection of the heavens upon the earth. The classical text of Chinese medicine is the Huangdian Jing, the Yellow Emperor's Internal Classic. This was written about 2,000 to 24 years ago, and its theories are the foundation of traditional Chinese medicine. It has two parts, the Su Wen and the Ling Shu. The Su Wen describes the universe as well as human anatomy, physiology, and pathology. The authors compared the consistent movements of the sun, the moon, and the stars with the chaos of the physical planet, and determined that the heavens provided the base patterns, and that the physical forms on earth were the manifestations of those patterns. If we look at yin-yang theory and the manifestations of Shen, yin-yang theory is the theory of opposition and the interactions of opposing forces. For example, day and night, hot and cold, one cannot exist without the other. It is the governing forces of growth and aging, life and death, material and immaterial, form and function. A quote from the Su Wen is, aspects of yin and yang that cannot be measured are called Shen. Shen also relates to the mental activities and emotions within the human experience. One Shen can also refer to one's spirit. We cannot hold someone's depression or anxiety in our hands or inspect it under a microscope, so it's considered energy. If we look up here at the quote from the Su Wen, in heaven, Shen is wind. On earth, it is wood. In heaven, it is heat. On earth, it is fire. In heaven, it is dampness. On earth, it is soil. In heaven, it is dryness. On earth, it is metal. In heaven, it is cold. On earth, it is water. Thus, in heaven, there is qi, and on earth, the forms are completed. Form and qi mutually influence one another, and the 10,000 things come into being. Su Wen 66. So what this is saying is this concept of qi, of heaven, in the form of Shen, comes down really as our weather in these different ways. It develops the semi-tangible aspects of what were also known as the elements, but we're going to speak of them as the five phases or forms. And then within our bodies, they become or relate to these different tissues within our bodies. And intangibly, also within our bodies, we have the tastes that are related to those different elements or phases. This slide is yet another example and really exemplifies the way that humans are a microcosm of the macrocosm. Here on the left, you have the energy of heaven coming down and earth rising up. This is really representative by a big tree rising up and reaching towards the sky. Here you have the 5 movements of the stars. Xuan represents the dark void of the mysterious. Shen Ming represents the deities. Shen itself is this energy we're talking about that's coming down in form of our weather. And if we look here, this is how it relates to us as organisms on the planet. The Zang organs relate to what we call the yin organs within our system. This is heart, spleen, lung, kidney, and liver. And here you can see how different tissues within our system relate to the different elements. So the sinews relate to wind, the vessels relate to heat, the flesh relates to the damp, the skin relates to the dry, and the bones relate to the cold. A good example of this in physiology is if somebody has something called cold damp B syndrome. This is a type of arthritis. When it's cold and damp outside, then their symptoms are aggravated by the conditions outside. That's a representation of how that which is outside us is also within us. The Fu organs represent the hollow organs within our bodies. This is small intestine, stomach, large intestine, urinary bladder, and gallbladder. The 6 channels represent the different levels within our system. I won't go into that too much. The yang is energy, qi, that which is not of form. It represents function, and that's descending down. The yin rises up, and that's more form, solidity. This is a correspondence chart of the 5 phases. Wu Xing means 5 phases or 5 forms. If we take, for example, wood, and we look at the season of spring relates to wood. The organ is liver and gallbladder. The environment is wind. The development is birth and infant. The direction is east. The stage of day is dawn. The emotions are anger. The taste is sour. The color is green. The sounds is shouting. The odors is rancid. And the music note is A. This is a traditional Wuxing chart, and what I want to demonstrate here is the natural flow within the different phases. We're going to start with the generating cycle. The generating cycle is a clockwise formation here, okay? So basically wood generates fire, fire generates earth, earth generates metal, metal generates water, and water generates wood. When it's normal in its generation cycle, then everything is healthy. But what can happen sometimes is something called mother-son situation. And what is that if we look at wood as the mother of fire, if fire is overexuberant and out of balance, it can weaken the wood. We also have something called control cycles. And in the control cycle is this representation of the red arrow. So if we look at it, we have wood controlling earth. Earth controls water. Water controls fire. Fire controls metal. And metal controls wood. So what this means physiologically is if there's a normal balance between wood and earth, then there's a natural control of those elements. But if wood is overexuberant, or out of balance, it can be overbearing and too controlling on earth, and this can create pathology in the system. And so then we also have this other interaction that happens where the element that is the controlled element can come back around and counteract its controller. Physiologically in our systems, we can see this as something like fatty liver disease. So in fatty liver disease, there's deposits of fat on the liver. Well, these adipose deposits in Chinese medicine are considered phlegm. Phlegm is a form of dampness in Chinese medicine. It's a congealed form of dampness. Dampness relates to earth. So that's an example of where the organ system that relates to earth is counteracting against, in a pathological manner, its controller. So when everything's in balance, then we have the natural essence of the spirit or mind in place. So the Shen itself is the mental activities, and the essence of that is Shen, or spirit. And in Chinese medicine, this dwells within the heart and relates to the phase of fire. Yi is conscious thought, and it dwells in the spleen and stomach. Po is our corporeal soul. It's the aspect of our being that relates to our physical body. Zhi is our will to survive. It resides with water, relates to water, and is associated with the kidney urinary bladder system. Han is our ethereal soul. This is the part of our soul that is creativity, and it relates to wood. When these are all in balance, then we can have conscious thought, consideration of ourselves and others, and the mind is more at peace. Similar to this photograph here, as you can see, the waters are still. There's a sense of balance going on. Everything is in a peaceful state, and thus is able to reflect the heavens. We are all human, and emotions are a natural part of being human. Stresses of everyday life affect us in these ways. In Chinese medicine, we see that these emotions relate to certain organ systems within the 5 phases. So if we take, for example, fire, this relates to heart and small intestine. The emotion is joy, and it's really excessive joy, laughter for no reason, that can have an effect on the heart negatively. And so that is a direct effect. That's where the emotion that's related to that organ can have a direct effect on the organ system itself. There's also a situation in the mother-son that we spoke about before. So earth, stomach, and spleen relates to the emotion of worry or preoccupation, rumination. And if this is chronic and excessive, then it depletes the energy of the organ itself. But then the mother of that organ also starts to worry and can worry herself sick about this situation. So then it has a negative effect of weakening the mother organ system. If we look at the control cycle, this is another way that it can be affected. So water controls fire. It's associated with the kidney and urinary bladder system, and the emotion is fear. So excessive amounts of fear can have a negative effect on the heart because this is excessive. So it becomes over-controlling to the fire and creates pathology. So if we start to look at common symptoms of depression and anxiety and the relation to the organs and phases, if we look at the water kidney system and the Zhi, which is, I'll remind you, is the will, the symptoms related to this are going to be fatigue, no energy in the morning. They can get up, but then they go right back to bed again. They don't have the energy to face the day. They have a lack of initiative, of will. They don't want to start new projects or have trouble completing those they've started. There's a decrease in their libido and a loss of interest in activities they used to enjoy. If we look at the effect on wood, the liver, the hun, we see symptoms like headaches, irritability, vertigo, and anger outbursts. If it has an effect on fire, heart, and Shen, then we look at anxiety, heart palpitations, and insomnia as symptoms related to that organ system. If we look at earth and spleen and stomach and the symptoms related to that, that's yi, remember, conscious thought. So you see symptoms like lack of concentration, slowed thinking, anorexia, constipation, stomach pain, nausea, vomit, bloating, sensations of a lump in the throat. If it has an effect on the mental system, that's lung and po, the corporeal soul. You'll see sadness, crying for no apparent reason, and might complain frequently, or they can have symptoms of shortness of breath, or they may speak really softly, things of that nature. So if we look at this in terms of the 5 phases and how it can interplay in the system as a whole, we'll look at kidney to start. This is water. This is jur. When there's a depletion in this system, then it can no longer properly generate wood, liver. So the wood dries out, the yin becomes depleted, and the yang of the organ system, that's the heat, becomes more in excess, and the liver is more susceptible to this type of heat. That heat rises and creates things like the headaches, irritability. It can cause other things like high blood pressure. If we look at how liver would, when it's out of balance, it can be overreacting on spleen and stomach. The earth element, so it's over-controlling. Well, that'll bring about those digestional complaints that we saw. And sometimes it brings about constipation, things of that nature. Now, if this is deficient and it's not properly able to nourish heart, the fire of the heart can be aggravated, as well as if we look at this being deficient, unable to properly control fire, then you get this upflaring of heart fire. And that can result in things like anxiety, insomnia, heart palpitations. And if this is out of balance and can't properly control this aspect of things, the metal, then you can see where you would get the excessive crying, the lamentation, crying for no apparent reason, things of that nature. It depletes the energy of that organ system. And then, of course, this is depleted, so it can't further enhance the will. How does this translate into Zangfu diagnostic terminology? Well, if we have a deficiency of water in the system, then that, as I said before, affects this relationship between the fire and the water. Water can no longer control fire. Well, this is called kidney-heart disharmony in Zangfu Diagnostics. And it has those symptoms of anxiety, insomnia, and heart palpitations. Liver yang rising is what we spoke of before, where the yin of the liver becomes deficient and the yang, the heat aspect, rises up to the tops of the body and creates headaches, vertigo, irritability, high blood pressure. And these people are usually easily angered. When we have the liver invading spleen, that's wood overacting on earth. That's the digestive problems, constipation. When we have the fire unable to properly control the metal, then you can have the lung qi deficiency. That's the crying for no apparent reason, shortness of breath, sadness, and lamentation. So what are the treatment principles and methods used to try to regenerate this idea of a more balanced parts of the soul, parts of the spirit, and a more peaceful mind? Well, in Chinese medicine, we're going to first look to support the organ system itself and the metabolic function of that organism, of that organ system. We're going to support the essence of the spirit of that organ system, such as the hun, but we're also going to look to really support the essence of the body, strengthen the system. And then we also want to treat the emotion. Since we see the emotions as energy, we want to look to move and transform those energies so they're no longer stagnating in a pathological way, or at least less so. The methods that we commonly use are things like acupuncture and moxibustion. That's an energetic method of treating. There's specific acupuncture protocols that are used to do these things that stimulate metabolic function, support the essence, and treat the emotion. Moxibustion can be used to warm certain points as well to have this effect on the system. We use diet and herbal therapy. This is a biochemical way of approaching basically nourishing the system and utilizing biochemistry to help affect the physiology. And then we use things like Tuina and Qigong. These are structural and energetic therapies. So let's take a look at some of the common used herbal therapies. Xiaoyaosan rambling powder, also known as free and easy wanderer. This treats the pattern of wood overacting on earth by nourishing liver, blood, and yin. It aids in the flow of liver energy, qi, tonifies the spleen, and harmonizes the interactions between wood and earth. Tianwang Bu Shindan, Emperor of Heaven's special pill to tonify the heart, treats the patterns of kidney-heart disharmony by nourishing the yin of the kidney, nourishing the blood, engendering water, thus making one's will stronger, tonifies the heart, and calms the Shen. Gui Pi Tong, restore the spleen decoction, treats mother-son relationship between fire and earth, supplements the qi, nourishes the heart blood, and makes the spleen and heart qi stronger. Qigong and Tuina. So Qigong builds and enhances vital energy. These are exercises that focus on incorporating the movement of the body with the breath. It increases oxygen levels and promotes circulation of energy and blood. It stretches and releases restrictions in the connective tissue of vital organs, enhancing their function and giving them more, literally, room to breathe. Promotes a time for self-nourishment and self-love. It is a type of moving meditation. Tuina is Chinese medical massage. These are manual techniques that increase circulation through the channels, aid in the structural integration and alignment, include manual therapies that can release connective tissues around vital organs, and pressure points that can calm the mind. Conclusion is Chinese medicine can be helpful in treating depression and anxiety by promoting the vitality of the organs, increasing the natural function of these organs, and providing exercises and treatments that aid in calming the mind. It does this by addressing some of the root unseen energetic causes of these conditions and honoring the natural interactions of the organs within our system. I want to mention too that in the follow-up letter of this lecture, there's going to be a link where I've developed a video about 5-phase Qigong, and I would invite you to look at that video. It'll be an instructional video to help you learn some of the Qigong. There's many different Qigong videos on the web, and I would really encourage you to explore these as part of your self-care. Okay. So I'm going to be looking at some of these questions here. So do you have any suggestions regarding a TCM approach to addressing concerns related to the stigma about mental health issues? Help seeking behavior. Well, I think help seeking, I'm not really understanding that question too much, but it says, I think the stigma around mental health issues is really trying to look at, there's not really a problem with the person. These emotions are normal patterns of our lives. And just having that acceptance that there's things that we can do to enhance the natural health of the person. And by doing so, there's nothing wrong with that person. There's not, they're not diseased. They just need assistance. They need support and strength. The next question, how does the yin-yang theory affect us as individuals? So as individuals, it affects us a lot physiologically, and the balance of yin and yang within our systems is an important part of our general health. So, for an example, in menopause, there's a natural decline that happens within our kidney system. The kidney yin will have a natural decline as part of aging process. With that yin, the cold aspect of the kidney declining, then you'll get things like hot flashes is a good example, tidal sweats, five palm heat, things of that nature. So that's an example of how yin and yang plays a part in our physiology, and that we try to bring balance into the physiology by nourishing the yin aspect of the kidney system, and that helps to control the yang. How do you ease Earth's overreaction or any of the 5 phases to find the balance and calm? Well, we use this with the treatment methods, I think, if I'm understanding that question. So with the treatment modalities, we gradually start to create change in the system and nourish the organ systems that are out of balance or weakened, and try to regulate or clear energy from those that are stagnant or overreacting. Can you explain moxibustion a bit more? Moxibustion is a heat therapy. Basically, it's a rolled artemisia, which is a mugwort, and generally it can be applied in different ways. One of the ways, it looks like a cigar, and you light the tip of it, and you hold it over a point, and it heats the point. It has a deep penetrating infrared heat, and that heating of the point stimulates circulation to the specific point and helps its function. So for example, in one of the treatment modalities, to enhance the metabolic processes of the organ systems, we'll moxa the back transporting points. These are points along the spine at the level of innervation that goes into the organ system. And so you're stimulating that energy from the spine to go into the organ system. And by doing that, in Chinese medicine, blood follows qi. And so it brings circulation, nourishment to the organ system. How would you treat fatty liver disease? Well, that's a whole nother lecture. I really can't go into that. But what you want to look at is the systems as a whole. What's going on? What is going on with their diet? How can we support the spleen system to help drain, transform the dampness? A lot of it has to do with diet and lifestyle. How do you approach insomnia? Well, insomnia we can do a lot with energetically. When it's a symptom of the heart, then we want to treat that symptom a lot energetically with acupuncture, because it stimulates the parasympathetic nervous system and it brings people into a more calm state. And we use herbs to nourish the system as well. Is there a frequency or regular schedule for practice of Qigong? There's many different schools of Qigong, and I recommend looking at in your facility or your area. Some of the parks and recs are offering Qigong classes. And then there's a lot of videos, like I said, on YouTube and things of that nature that can provide Qigong. Well, I'm out of time for now. Thanks, everyone.